Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to our /MaliciousCompliance, where you'll hear super satisfying stories about people getting exactly what they ask for, not necessarily what they want. And in today's episode, a super entitled Karen destroys her husband's business by firing OP for disobeying her. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. Hit subscribe if you haven't, and as always, you can email your stories to this email right here. Alright. So I live in a mostly quiet neighborhood with lots of snowbirds and weekenders because of the proximity to a lake. The year-rounders are mostly retired and people just get along fine. So a couple of years ago, neighbors on one side built a new garage and driveway, moving their cars much closer to my existing forsythia hedge. I love the forsythia in the spring and basically let it grow however it likes so I can have bright yellow flowers. Almost immediately, they start complaining that the hedge blocked their view as they backed out of their driveway. Now in my state, neighbors have no right to a view extending over someone else's property, and our Supreme Court has repeatedly ruled that as long as trees and bushes don't actually impinge onto the roadway, property owners have no obligation to trim for visibility. With that said, I keep a 5-foot strip mode between my hedge and the road, perfectly reasonable to my way of thinking. So since they have no recourse, re hedges, they instead complain to county code enforcement about anything else they can think of. So they decide to complain about a truck on my property. My brother parked his licensed and insured project truck on my property a while back because he was in the process of moving and he needed a spot for it while he was figuring things out. In the meantime, he was in a bad accident in another vehicle, and the truck has been sitting for over a year now. The license plate recently expired, and I get a letter from the county with threats of fines if it wasn't removed. Cue the malicious compliance. My brother decided to sell the truck for scrap and had it towed away this morning. This gave my smug neighbors their temporary victory as they observed from their deck, and nearly 6 inches of improved view from their driveway. That is until I moved in my second vehicle, a 1960 Lincoln, into that place this afternoon. It's about 2 feet longer than the truck, with current plates and insurance. And as I'm a single person with more than one vehicle, I may get around to driving that old car at least once more before winter. Guys, if I were in OP shoes, I'd definitely be looking to get an RV as soon as possible. And scrolling through the comments, someone actually suggested not even needing to buy one, as a lot of people are always looking for places to park their RVs. So why not make a little bit of money while spiting a neighbor, right? So a couple of weeks ago, my kids and their neighbors decided to have a bake sale. We live in a tourist area with a lot of foot traffic, and the kids do make a killing. I tell the kids I ought to charge them for the labor, as I said I'd help bake, and the ingredients, so they learn the concept of net gains, but instead, I'll just donate to their cause, and just to bring me back the money I lent them to make change. I love seeing the kids be entrepreneurial, work so hard, and get so excited at their success. So after a couple of hours, the neighbor's son decided that he's bored, and he wants to go home. So he tells my kid, when you're done, come by and deliver half the money. And that's when mine says, hey, that's not fair. If you're leaving now, we should split the money now. Mind you, the bulk of their sales was my baking. That's when the neighbor kid gets super pissed, but mine sticks to their guns. They split the money, and the kid leaves in a huff. Mine comes in a few hours later, having lugged home all the gear and cleaned up, annoyed that the neighbor kid got annoyed at them. It was at that point I get a knock on the door. It's the neighbor's mom, with the kid who's still pouting, and mom's holding a receipt. The mom then explains that they purchased a bunch of stuff for the bake sale, and it did cost a lot of money, and it's not fair that my kid's making money off their stuff, and that they should be compensated for what they purchased. The receipt lists a bunch of items I immediately see they didn't use, like 2 boxes of cereal when they used 1, napkins that I provided, but whatever. And never mind that her son went home early and left mine to clean up. And never mind that I'd been churning out batches of cookies all morning. I'm irked that they've taken what was a fun, cheerful day of kids making money hand over fist and shown up at my door making me engage in a super awkward conversation because they assume their kid can't be wrong. So that's when I say, of course, and I fetch my receipts. I then sit down in front of them and out loud calculate the cost of lemonade and the cups used. I then calculate the cost of flour, sugar, chocolate chips, vanilla and butter per batch of cookies, and multiplied that by the number of batches I made. And did I mention that I made a lot of cookies? So at the end of my calculations, what do you know? The neighbor kid has to fork over $23, and they got pretty quiet all of a sudden. I then thanked the lady for making sure that things were fair and offered her a plate of cookies for her to take home. The woman declined and left. This malicious compliance is amazing, and for all of you who are wondering, OP said the woman did have to pay OP the $23 that was owed. And guys, I love that OP taught the greedy neighbors a lesson in humility, and hopefully their son also learned that Mama Karen can't always fix everything. So 3 years ago, I was working in a popular local cafe in the middle of a big city. Obviously, there were a lot of customers during rush hours, and of course, the usual Karens. At the time of the story, I was just finishing my training to be fully hired. The manager, Steve, was an utterly obnoxious person who was overall very disturbing. The guy would tell us to do something and then change his mind when we were halfway through it. The guy wasn't exactly competent, but we were low on staff and the owner desperately needed a manager. So one day, I'm just clocking in, and I see my first customers are a bunch of kids and their Karen mom. And yes, she did have the haircut. And the following conversation ensues. Karen asked, "Hey, what's your muffin flavors?" I start naming all the muffin flavors when Karen interrupts me and says, No, I'll just take one of those special edition muffins." She then points to the back of the kitchen at a limited edition muffin sign that we had put away, like she's expecting me to make them for her. That's when I say, "Oh, sorry ma'am, those are limited edition muffins. We don't have them anymore." Karen then rolls her eyes and says, "Yeah, I know, that's what I want. Just give me 5 of them." I repeat myself a little bit louder this time, thinking maybe the first time she didn't hear me. I say to her, we don't have those anymore, ma'am, I'm sorry." The woman then tells me to go check the back, and when I argue that there's none, she starts screaming for a manager. Now at this point I'm pretty pissed because the woman starts screaming at me at the top of her lungs and gathering all the attention towards her. So of course, I go get the manager, and Steve looks mad as soon as I disturb him. The guy goes to see Karen and then comes back to me and says, "Dude, just give her the muffins, now." I tell him, "We don't have any of those muffins left, I explained that to her." And Steve says, "There are some left, just go find them." I tell him I'm pretty positive we don't have any left. And he says, "I don't care about your opinion. Just go find them. Ask others to help find them if you're that dumb. Just don't go back to that lady or any other customers until you find those muffins." I think about what he just said and say, "Okay, sir, I'll give her the muffins." So I go and try to find them everywhere in the store. Of course, there's none left, as the muffins are seasonal items, and since none arrived in stock, there's no limited edition muffins left. Cue the malicious compliance. So since Steve told me to not go back to the lady or any other customers until I found the muffins, I do exactly that. And since he also told me to ask others for help, I make sure to let every employee know my desperate need for help finding the muffins. In the end, since no one liked Steve anyways, we all went searching for the muffins. For almost half an hour, customers kept pouring in, until one of them dared to ask what we were all doing running around. That's when I calmly explained that our manager sent us searching for something and we can't work until we find it. I insisted that our hands were tied and we were specifically told that we couldn't serve them until our manager said so. Pretty soon, customers were screaming for the manager, and as soon as Steve heard that, he opens the door and everyone starts yelling at him to let the employees serve them. Visibly confused by so many people in the cafe and in front of him, he shouts my name. Now I wasn't allowed to stop searching, so I replied back by yelling. He eventually came in front of me and asked me what the heck was going on, and the following conversation was priceless. I say to him, "Oh, I was just searching for the muffins like you told me to do." Steve looked like he was about to pass out, and he says, "What? Why? That was so long ago." I say to him, "Well, you asked me to find them and get help if I needed to, and you insisted that I shouldn't go serve anyone until I found them. And since we never did find them..." At this point, Steve realizes that he just lost, and he said, "Seriously, go back to work now." Steve ended up going ballistic on me, saying that this was insubordination, that I had the IQ of a slug, etc, etc. Meanwhile, the whole time, Karen thought we were making her muffins in the back. She ended up sending multiple complaints to the owner about the manager, and the owner ended up personally coming in to announce to us that Steve was fired and replaced by one of my coworkers. You know what, guys, I'm actually kind of happy that the Karen actually played a part in getting Steve fired, because the guy sounded like a terrible manager. And guys, I also love that the whole time, Karen thought that everybody was in the back making her those special edition muffins. Like, holy crap, yes ma'am, the world does revolve around you. Let us slave away in the back creating those special edition muffins that are no longer available to the general public. Okay, so I used to work at a bar as the only female security. Now, this bar had some very bad things happen when a man followed a woman to the bathroom, so they needed a woman who could keep an eye out on what happened in there. The bar also got in legal trouble all the time. The bathroom thing above, the fire marshal closing them down on some busy weekend nights for being over capacity, and the liquor board had pulled their license once already for over-serving or serving minors with pretty obvious fake IDs. I was one of the new security hired to help resolve all this. It was so bad that we had to be trained by a government ATF person and get a card to prove that we knew how to spot and stop overserves, and also to spot fake IDs. But I think the real reason they hired us was to have scapegoats on the ready for the next time they did this. So I worked there for a while, and I was doing my best. But the owner's wife was the worst. The woman was always drunk, always had her friends in the bar, and bent the rules for them. She thought she was Lady Jesus and that we should all be kissing her feet because she was the owner's wife. I mostly stayed out of her way and had no issues, but many coworkers complained about her. On one night, some dude gets sick on the way to the bathroom and I cut him off and he ends up getting escorted out by his less drunk friends. I then notice a man sitting at the bar watching this. The guy was wearing creased slacks, a jacket indoors on a summer night, and had no drink in his hand. I start watching him and notice the badge under his jacket, and I'm thinking, aha, the guy's here to watch for over-serving. So a little while later, a woman comes to the bathroom, drunk enough to need to hold onto the walls for dear life. I cut her off. The woman then screams at me and goes into the bathroom and tries to wash off the giant black Sharpie X from the back of her hands. I warn her that she'll be kicked out of the club if she continues. The woman screams again and staggers out of the bathroom. About 5 minutes later, the owner's wife is in my face and she's screaming. So apparently the woman I cut off was one of her best friends attending a bachelorette party in the VIP section, and she screamed at me that I was supposed to somehow magically know that the woman was VIP. I was also apparently supposed to break the law for her because she was VIP. So her and I start a screaming match where I inform her that her husband had hired me to make sure the law was followed. I also start to inform her about the police officer sitting at the bar, but she screamed in my face to shut your damn mouth and get out of my bar. The woman fired me on the spot. So I decide, you know what, I'll just go. I didn't bother waiting to see if her husband agreed. It was known that she wore the pants. I complied, shut my mouth, and got out of her bar. I walked past the cop, still sitting at the end of the bar near the bathrooms, where the screaming match had taken place. I made eye contact with him, gave a slight nod, to which he responded by looking at the boss's wife, rolling his eyes, and smiling at me as I left. They got shut down almost immediately that night for over-serving the bachelorette party. And this time they actually went out of business because of too many strikes against them. Guys, can I just say how much I enjoyed that the undercover cop was there and got to witness the BS the owner's wife pulled? And I only wish OP stayed there for the fallout, where the officer confronted the wife so we could all know what happened. Like, I'm just gonna imagine her going mega Karen, screaming and attack the officer, and in the end getting arrested. And guys, I bet the husband was really happy about his wife's entitlement, getting his business shut down for good though. I'm a young person working in the backroom position at a retail store. I've been working there for about a year now, and my management was excellent when I started. And as a result, I'm very well trained. I never got written up, I'm always on time, and I consistently do things well above my pay grade. I fill in for my supervisor in the back room, and I can run it myself if need be. And I trained our newest supervisor in her position. And if you're wondering, I didn't take the supervisor job because it required changing my shift time. I knew all the fine details, and I was a team trainer as well. Basically, I was a supervisor but without the pay raise. My managers ended up moving on to greener pastures, and their positions were filled by new management. The new management doesn't compare to the quality of the old management at all. Our new store manager, who I'll call Karen, is the worst manager that I've ever had the displeasure of working for. The woman loves workplace politics, acting snaky, and micromanaging everything. When suggested solutions to problems, Karen would rather take a less effective route just to be the one in charge. And when she messes up, instead of admitting it, Karen blames everyone but herself and makes it their responsibility to avoid looking dumb. Karen also doesn't help when she's needed, rarely does her job, takes personal phone calls all day, and she sits in her office on her computer. She's rude, inconsiderate, and incompetent. All in all, Karen's an awful boss. Now, I did try to make peace with Karen at first, but we quickly started bumping heads, and our relationship is shaky at best. We were cordial with each other, but Karen wanted me to abandon 100% of my authority while still running the back, which couldn't happen because others come to me for direction a lot. Well, of course, Karen screws up. One day in the back, we finished with a group activity. Simply put, I had to pee, so once we were done, I told my supervisor that I needed a bathroom break and had to use the bathroom. The second I began my business, I got called on the intercom by Karen to come to the back room. So I sigh, finish up quickly, and go back to the stockroom. I was gone maybe 2 to 5 minutes tops. When I walk in, Karen immediately interrogates me on where I'd been and what I was doing. I told her I'd gone to the bathroom, and she continued asking like the answer was gonna be different. Eventually, Karen said this gem to me, which she couldn't have known would change the course of our time at this company forever. Karen says to me, "You need to use company time more wisely and do your job." I'm thinking, okay. Now, remember how I said that I was basically the backup stock supervisor at this place? My list of self-appointed management duties were actually pretty long. I was in charge of training new people, fixing damaged items, fixing packaging, training the supervisors, doing paperwork, delegating tasks, taking garbage out, cleaning the stockroom. The list goes on and on. So when Karen said this to me, something clicked. You see where this is going. So I stop all of it. All the managerial stuff went right out the window. If you want me to do my job, okay, I'll do my job. Not your job, not her job, only mine. You can direct your own team, Karen, do your own paperwork, train your own supervisors, because I'm just a lowly wagey, right? And yep, my stockroom fell apart pretty quickly. Suddenly, the entire room was in disarray, new people weren't being trained, faulty product was being put out, my new supervisor had no idea what to do other than copy me, so no paperwork got done, garbages stopped being taken, and people in the stockroom did not have direction. Gee, I wonder why. The whole place was a mess, and management couldn't say anything about it, because those were management's duties and not my problem. I knew that Karen knew what I did, but all she could basically do was silently fume about it, suck it up, and do her actual job. She got pissy with me after this and tried giving me less shifts, but that didn't last. Management finally got involved with the stockroom, and I've never been so satisfied with myself. All because Karen couldn't accept that I had to go pee. Like, what are you gonna do? Fire me for doing my job? It's crazy how many stories I read where new management takes over and basically causes the place to just go up in flames. And I always wonder how the heck people like this get manager positions. So I'm a senior construction superintendent. The project I'm currently on is a 13-acre site, smack in the middle of an extremely affluent area to the north of Dallas. 3 weeks ago, a city inspector that we'll call Joe came to the site office and said they received a complaint about a sprinkler/soaker line being damaged during excavation for the fire lane. So he, my landscaper, and myself went to investigate. We then discovered where a small fitting had blown out of the line. The landscaper repaired it, and I went to knock on the door to explain to them the issue and inform them of the repair. I got no answer at the door, so I left a card and a note asking them to call me. They never did. A week later, Joe comes in and mentions that they've reached out again about the noise from the equipment, which is odd, because anyone with heavy equipment is currently working on the other end of the property. I again went to speak with them, got no answer at the door, and left a card again. Yesterday, in walks Joe to tell me that they're complaining that our construction fence is on their property and killing their grass. The fence is 12 feet away from their fence, and our specs call for it to be a minimum of 15 feet from the property line. So I pull up the CAD files on the survey plat so I can make sure we have it placed exact, and realize that their wood fence is actually 4 feet onto our property, and their house is about 14 inches on our property. During all this, I get an email from the city, asking me to place the construction fence squarely on our property line. The email is sent to me, the apparent homeowner, Joe, and my project manager. I brought the surveyors back out yesterday to pinpoint our property corners and to give us some reference points to measure from. I then knocked on the homeowner's door again and got no answer. Mind you, every time there were cars in the driveway. So fast forward to this morning. My fence crew shows up and they began moving the fence onto the property line, which takes about 31 inches, which is 2 feet 7 inches of their driveway, and 18 feet of the road where it ends at the property. The client finally reached out, or more accurately, he came to the site office in a huff. I then explained the issue, showed him the plat, and he left with some unkind words flowing from him, like a diesel exhaust on a steep incline. I put a pause on the fence relocation just to soothe the wound. My project manager calls him, and I called the city engineer and our client. We set up a meeting that just ended. The guy claimed that our plat was wrong. The engineer and everyone disagreed. The back and forth went on long enough for the client, who's extremely laid back and a quiet gentleman, to finally speak up and basically say, okay, we're just gonna go ahead and sell you the property that you've stolen at current market value plus 10%. And in this area, it's not cheap. If that's not acceptable, we'll just have you move your fence, cut out your driveway, and use the side of your home for advertisement. Or you can back off, let these guys work, and we'll give you lifetime use of the area that you currently occupy, as long as there's no hassling of any kind. The guy asked me if we'd move the fence back out, and I told him no. I agreed to take it off his driveway, but the street and the green space belonged to us. We only did what he asked us to do. The engineer who asked me to move it agreed. So there it is. The story again, the fallout, and the conclusion. Guys, I love stories where property lines are involved, as it never goes well for the people who complain. Like, it's all fun and games until someone threatens to use the side of your home for advertisement, right? And that, my friends, brings us to another end of r/malicious compliance. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's super duper satisfying stories. If you did, hit that like button. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, I'm gonna link it right here. It's in r/entitled people, where a Karen neighbor won't stop parking on OP's driveway, and she actually calls police when he has her towed. It's such a ridiculous story, so go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.